Paul Slansky, a journalist and author of the well-known and aptly titled book, My Bad, the Apology Anthology, said, to err is human, to err in public, humiliating. I don't think most of us, lay individuals, the general public, really have an opportunity to do what some of these celebrities do and have a chance to be exposed like that, out in the open with these great scandals and things. But I think as a people, we have a pretty good idea about what apology is all about because we tend to do it in our interpersonal relationships with each other. There's a great movie, well, not that great of a movie, but a movie from 1970 called Love Story with Ali McGraw and Ryan O'Neal, where there's this great line, love means never having to say you're sorry. Interestingly enough, it's the number 13 greatest line of all time, according to the American Film Institute. But those of us that have ever been in a real relationship know that love means always having to say you're sorry, even at times when maybe you don't think you did anything wrong. It's a way that we preserve relationships, build relationships, and keep them going. And so I think in a lot of ways we can identify with what's happening when we see people in the public sphere apologizing. We have a sense of it, we understand it. And clearly there's no shortage of people that are engaging in these kinds of apologies. We have politicians, celebrities, athletes, religious leaders, corporations, and they're all apologizing for a variety of different things, ranging from sexual infidelity to deception to violence to ripping microphones from poor Taylor Swift's hands during the Video Music Awards. It just varies, and you see it everywhere. What's interesting is that not only are these kinds of events very prominent, you tend to see them every week or every month. There's so many of them. They're very, we tend to gravitate toward them and we tend to be very interested in them. This slide behind me shows an example of some of the more prominent apologies we've had over the last few years and the number of YouTube hits that the clips of their apologies have generated online. And what better measure of the viral nature of a video than how many clips that how much attention it receives on YouTube. Interestingly enough, these numbers sometimes dwarf the number of hits that things that should probably be getting more attention, such as State of the Union addresses, political debates. These numbers tend to dwarf those numbers. And I think that attests to how interested we are in them. But despite our interest in these kinds of rhetorical events, these apologies, I don't think we understand them very well. And a pretty good evidence of this is a recent survey by Surveys USA. They asked the general public, how many of you thought Lance Armstrong was being honest in his interview with Oprah Winfrey? 17% said they felt he was being honest. 39% said, no, I don't think he's being honest. And 44% said, we're not really sure. So what that tells me is that people, when they're watching these apologies, they don't really know what they're looking for. They're not really sure what makes for an effective apology. So that's what I wanted to do today, is kind of give you a glimpse into the mind. Hopefully you'll find something in there, but in the mind of a person that actually studies public apologies, to know when I watch one of these, what am I thinking? Okay? And I thought a good example would be to use Lance Armstrong, basically because this is probably the most recent prominent apology. He apologized just 2 months ago. It's one of the longest apologies I have ever seen, at 1 hour and 40 minutes, not including commercials, a long apology. And also the great disparity between where his reputation was, being a hero to many, having overcome testicular cancer, winning 7 Tour de France titles, and starting a philanthropy organization, the Livestrong Foundation. His fall was quite far, and so I thought that would be interesting to look at. So here are some of the things that I look for in gauging whether an apology was effective. The first one is, and some of you will probably understand this better if I use the religious terms that are often used when describing this type of strategy. A lot of people refer to it as worldly sorrow versus godly sorrow. And that's the idea of where you're sorry that you got caught or you're really sorry. So let's look at a short clip of Lance Armstrong, and I think his words kind of feed into this argument.
And I'm paying the price for it. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. You know, I deserve this. I don't look around and go, hey, Oprah, hey, I am getting so screwed here. We're sitting here because there was a 2-year federal investigation, criminal federal investigation of me.
Keep on using banned substances to do it.
Yes. And I'm not sure that this is an acceptable answer.
Okay, so he's doing a couple of really good things there. First, he's saying that he's not, he knows he deserves it, and that's a good thing to do. But he's also peppering that with some language that takes away from his apology when he says, I'm not sure this is an acceptable answer. Why would anybody say that unless they wanted to communicate to the audience that they're searching for the right answer? Right? The answer that will get them out of trouble rather than the answer that expresses a true kind of sorrow for what you did. And so that's one strategy that we look for engaging the effectiveness of an apology. Another strategy that we look for is whether they're using other things that take away from their apology. So the best way to illustrate this is imagine somebody saying, I am deeply sorry for what I have done. Sounds pretty good, right? But then the inevitable but tends to follow. I'm sorry I did this, but it wasn't very bad. And we wonder, why'd you have to go there? You were doing so well with the I'm sorry, but then they take away from it. A couple of strategies that Lance Armstrong used that really took away from his apology was he claimed that the situation kind of got out of his control and that he blames other people. He tries to share some of his culpability with other people.
I've had a messy life. It's no excuse. I had it. And then it just, things got too big. Things got too crazy. I didn't invent the culture, but I didn't try to stop the culture. I didn't have access to anything else that nobody else did.
Okay, so my intention here today is not to be totally down on Lance Armstrong, that his apology doesn't work, it's horrible. There are some good things about it, but when you throw in strategies like this, it creates an audience perception that maybe your apology isn't as authentic as it could be. Now, another strategy is to allow the audience to judge and not rush their forgiveness. Sometimes what speakers will do is they'll say, and I've seen this countless times, I've apologized over and over for this. Why can't you just accept it? Okay? And that's problematic because who gets to determine when an apology is accepted? Not the speaker. It's the person that was wronged that gets to determine that. And so if the speaker tries to rush that, it detracts from the effectiveness. And here's an example of that.
2 parts. 1, step down as chairman, but stay on the board. Stay involved. That wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for the people, for our supporters.
Will you rise again?
I don't know what's out there. And again, I go to this thing, I do not know the outcome here.
Okay, so he's doing some really good things there too. Well, in the second part, he's saying, I don't know the outcome. It's up to the audience to determine how long I'm going to have to go through this and how long I'm going to have to apologize. In the first part, he's saying, I did all this stuff, but it wasn't enough for you. So there's sort of an arrogance there almost that he should be apologizing or being forgiven more quickly than he is. Another strategy is to create an authentic emotional response. So, and I'm not saying somebody's inevitably going to leave here and say, Stein told us to fake it, that we should pretend that we're sorry. And that's not what I'm saying. But you need to offer an authentic emotional response. And there's one point in the interview where Lance Armstrong actually does this. And here's the clip.
I saw my son defending me and saying, that's not true. What you're saying about my dad is not true. And it almost goes to this question of why now? You know, he can't. Yeah.
Okay, so he when he's talking about his son and having to lie to his son, he shows authentic emotion, right? You can see it in there. He also does that when he's talking about his mother and what this has done to her. Unfortunately, at other parts of the interview, when he's talking about the impact of his actions on the public, the fans, and how he betrayed them through his lying, there isn't the same kind of emotion. So it creates an interesting contrast there. Why is he not feeling emotional when he's talking about the general public and the fans, but he is exhibiting a lot of emotion when he's talking about his family? So it shows he feels something, he just doesn't feel anything toward you guys. He doesn't necessarily care that he hurt you, he just doesn't want to hurt his son, okay? Another interesting component of the apology, and people always find this fascinating, is the nonverbal cues that are present in the apology. And there are a variety of different things that somebody can do in terms of gesturing and eye behavior and the vocal qualities. And we don't have time to talk about all of them today, but I would like to highlight just a couple of them. One in particular that is very prominent in these videos is Lance Armstrong constantly bringing his hand to his mouth. Let me show you an illustration of this, and then I'll tell you what I think it means after we watch it.
Meaning me, and I'll answer the questions directly, honestly.
It was, it was definitely professional. And I don't want to accuse him. Just, again, just trying to.
Were you trying to? Were you?
Okay, it's always complicated when you're evaluating nonverbal cues, because what causes people to exhibit nonverbal cues? What causes them to have nervous tics, to touch their mouth? A lot of times it's anxiety. And do you think Lance Armstrong is feeling anxious when he's interviewing with Oprah? Yes, so you can explain it away that way. But a lot of people believe that Lance Armstrong has control over his nonverbals because in other types of interviews and public appearances, he doesn't do this. So what I think is happening here is when he touches his hand to his mouth, what he's doing is he's sort of worried that the wrong thing's going to come out. So it's like, let me think about what I'm going to say here, and he's preventing it from coming out. The other thing that he does is he touches his lip a lot and rubs his face and his mouth, and that's usually what we call a comfort gesture, where you're trying to calm yourself down, like, oh my gosh, Oprah's grilling me. It's okay, Lance. You can make it through this. And so that's basically what's happening there. And it's interesting. It's not necessarily an indication that he's lying, but the hand over the mouth is an indicator that there's something he's hiding, that even though he says he wants to come out with everything, he doesn't necessarily want to come out with everything. He wants to come out with certain pieces that will help him to repair his reputation. Another common nonverbal cue is the hands in the lap. And so what he does is he constantly brings his hands close to his lap. This is usually an indication that he's maybe hiding something, he's guarded. And so here's an example of that.
Very conservative. Very risk-averse form.
Honestly and candidly.
Okay, so with the hands in the lap, as I indicated, what he's doing is usually people have what we call open gestures and open body postures. So especially with a man, women tend to sit more with their legs close together, and men, you've seen them sit like this, where they put their arms out and their legs are kind of spread out. Or earlier in the interview, he props his foot up on his leg, but his legs are kind of open. That's a very open gesture for a man. With Lance Armstrong, his legs are closed and his hands are in his lap. That's a very feminine gesture for a man, and it's an indication that he's trying to protect himself, that he's not being fully open. Okay, another common nonverbal gesture is the smile. And a lot of people think a smile, especially in an uncomfortable situation like he's in, is indicating either anxiety or maybe something else. So let's watch the clip and I'll tell you what I think is happening.
Texted to the Associated Press and said, I told her to go wherever she wants. Her meaning me.
But there were plenty of other reckless things. You know, I've recorded it, I've put everything on, I've videoed everything, I'm going to put it on YouTube.
Okay, so the question I ask when I'm watching that is, why is he laughing? What's funny about it? Why is he smiling? Obviously, a lot of people smile when they're uncomfortable, but usually smiling is an indicator of either two things. One of them is moral superiority, or feeling you're better than other people, or the other explanation is feelings of contempt. And I don't know that he necessarily has feelings of contempt for Oprah. She didn't do anything personally to him, but maybe he resents the idea that he shouldn't have to be in this situation. He shouldn't have to apologize. And so that's where the uncomfortable smiles are coming in. Other nonverbal cues are adapters. That's where you're constantly touching yourself. When I tell my students that nonverbal cue of adapters means you're scratching yourself or touching yourself, they usually laugh uncomfortably, like that means something really interesting. But here it's just a matter of touching yourself during the interview when you're uncomfortable.
Did it all work?
I viewed it as very, I'm sure there would be other people that couldn't handle it, but
Semantics here. Are we talking semantics, meaning a fine line between you have to do it, but hey, look, you're on this team?
Okay, so usually that's just an indicator that he's super uncomfortable in the interview, that you would expect that, and he's comforting himself because he's in that awkward situation. In terms of anxiety, another thing that causes anxiety is not just the fact that you're in a bad situation, but lying and knowing that you're lying causes anxiety. And so that's why people that study nonverbals think that when there are a great many adapters, that's usually an indication of some kind of deception or lying. And the last nonverbal cue is this idea of open gesturing. I didn't want to make it seem like Lance Armstrong's gestures are all bad and they all indicate something terrible, because he makes very good eye contact and he does a very good job with his open gesturing. And here's an example of something he's doing that's very good.
work on the disease, you win the Tour de France 7 times, you have a happy marriage, you have children. I mean, it's just this win at all costs. When I was diagnosed and I was being treated, I said, I will do anything I have to do to survive.
Okay, so he has his arms out. That's usually a truth-telling indicator, that I'm very comfortable, I know what I'm saying, I actually believe what I'm saying, and so I'm going to give open gestures, and that's usually an indication of honesty. And then the last strategy that somebody uses that we look for is assurances of corrective action. And this is where they tell you, I'm going to change my future behavior, I'm going to do something about this to fix it.
Some people are gone forever, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back trust and apologize to people for the rest of my life. I'm not going to lie to you or to the public and say, I'm in therapy, I feel better. He's still there. Does he need to be exiting through this process? Yes. Am I committed to that process? Yes.
Okay, so what he's actually doing a good job there. He's claiming that his repairing of his image, his fixing of this problem is going to be a process, and that he will work on that. So that's something very positive he's doing. Obviously, I can only give you a couple indicators of what I look for when somebody engages in a public apology. So what do we take from this? The next time you're sitting on your couch and you're watching Lindsay Lohan apologize for the 100th DUI, this arms you with some tools for evaluating that. Instead of being in that 44% where you say, I'm not really sure what's happening here, you're looking for certain things. You're looking for whether they're using strong enough language to describe their action. If they ran over somebody with their car, they're not going to identify that as a screw-up or a mistake or I messed up. That's not strong enough language, okay? Are they using appropriate nonverbals? Are they expressing adequate remorse? In the end, the best way to apologize is to actually feel your apology. I know that's easier said than done, but if you're in a situation where you're forced to apologize, it's much better to actually be sorry than to simply act sorry. Benjamin Franklin probably said it best when he said, never ruin an apology with an excuse. Thank you.